The defeat of the Islamic State group in Raqqa has led to celebrations across the region, and refugees who fled the city are now hoping they can return home for the first time in years. But it's far from the end of the fight against the group. Many IS jihadists have simply fled to other parts of the region. And it's unclear what, if any, long-term plan the US and other coalition members have to stop the extremists from coming back. Anne Barker reports.
3 years ago, it was Islamic State fighters who did victory laps in Raqqa's main square after seizing control of the city and declaring it the capital of an Islamic caliphate. Now, after 4 months of fighting, it's Syrian defence forces backed by the US-led coalition who are parading in celebration. In the past 24 hours, they've finally recaptured the strategic city and forced IS out. Last night, the Al-Naim Square was liberated, says this Kurdish fighter, and today the stadium is fully liberated from the terrorists. We'll raise our flag and declare Raqqa liberated. The final victory came after Kurdish-led forces seized Raqqa's main hospital and the sports stadium, where dozens of IS fighters who'd refused to surrender made their last stand. But their defeat has come at a high price. More than 1,000 civilians have died since the battle for Raqqa began in June, and most of the city has been destroyed. US Colonel Ryan Dillon from the Combined Joint Task Force operation says there are still a few Islamic State cells in the city.
ISIS is losing its grip. After more than 4 months of operations, Raqqa is more than 90% cleared. We are aware of the reports that ISIS has been defeated in Raqqa. However, clearance operations continue, and we expect our Syrian Democratic Force partners to hit pockets of resistance as the final parts of the city is cleared.
Nevertheless, thousands of refugees who fled Raqqa in 2014 can finally plan their return. Abdelmajid Al-Hamoud and his family have lived for 3 years in a refugee camp in Jordan. His son Khaled says he hopes to return to Raqqa as soon as he can. We're very happy because Raqqa has been liberated, he says, and I can't wait to see our relatives and friends. I can't wait to return to my school and meet my grandfather and friends and have fun with them. But all that could still be a long time off. 80% of Raqqa's buildings have been flattened or shattered, and much of the city is littered with explosives and booby traps. A US State Department spokeswoman, Heather Nauert, says the US will take the lead in removing landmines before anything else can be done.
Eventually, we would get to the point where we would start to remove some of the rubble, get to the point where we would get the electricity going once again, providing clean water. All of this takes time, but we have committed people who are willing to do this very difficult work to get the basics back for the people of Syria, specifically in the area of Raqqa.
Even then, there's a long road ahead before Raqqa can return to anything like normal life. Humanitarian workers, including George Graham at the aid agency Save the Children, say the city may have been freed, but the humanitarian crisis is getting worse.
There's more than 250,000 people who have fled the city. At least half of those are children. They're hungry, they're exhausted, they're very vulnerable, and lots of them are really traumatised. They're living in desperate conditions in hot camps, and of course some of them will not go home because their houses have been demolished. They need protection, and most of all they need education. These kids need to get back to school so they have some sort of future.
And while Islamic State fighters have fled their de facto capital, they haven't abandoned their cause. Their defeat in Raqqa is just another step in the broader campaign by the US and its allies to contain the extremists' insurgency. And they're yet to come up with a clear long-term strategy to prevent Islamic State leaders from regrouping and establishing new bases elsewhere in the region.
Anne Barker reporting.